Buried in a recent government study on the alarming increase in identity theft in this country is a startling number. The Federal Trade Commission estimated that in 9% of all cases of identity theft, a family member or relative was the culprit. That means 1 out of every 11 cases is an inside-the-family job. The causes are many: drugs, divorce, money troubles, and just plain bad blood between relatives. Identity theft has become a family affair, pitting parents against children, brother against brother, sister against sister.
She was the youngest in the family, and I was the oldest girl.
So you were close sisters?
Yeah.
You were family?
Definitely.
As Abigail Kelly remembers it, growing up, her kid sister Delia, 5 years younger, always looked up to her. So as adults, Abigail wasn't surprised when Delia asked her to be a beneficiary on a life insurance policy. You had to give her your Social Security number.
For that reason, yeah.
Nothing went across your mind at all?
No.
Well, why would it?
Why would it?
But the Social Security number Abigail gave Delia would soon touch off a bitter family fight and a court case that stretched from Maine, where Delia lives, to San Diego, Abigail's home. It started one day when Abigail was looking for a house to rent.
And a very nice gentleman who ran a credit report on me said, "You have a warrant out for your arrest in Maine."
A warrant for your arrest?
Yeah.
In Maine, where your sister lived?
Right.
The warrant was for an unpaid bill for home heating oil. Sure enough, it was in Abigail's name. And she would soon find out so were a lot of other things.
I called Maine Information and I asked for myself. And they gave me a phone number.
You were listed in Maine. She was actually being you.
Yes.
Totally.
Which amazed me that she could just give a Social Security number and, oh, here's a phone line.
And it wasn't just the phone company in Maine. Because of her own shaky credit history, Delia had used Abigail's Social Security number and name to get credit from a bank, from other energy companies, even for a hot tub.
I called police in Maine.
Well,
they laughed at me on the phone.
They literally laughed?
They literally laughed on the phone. Like,
why?
You really think we're going to deal with your problems in California here? You think we're going to deal with an identity theft with a family member over here? That this is going to be on the top of our priority?
The FBI put her off, too. So Abigail took Delia to court in San Diego, filing a civil suit against her own sister, charging that along with everything else, she, Abigail, lost a job when the employer's background check turned up that Maine warrant for her arrest. The judge ruled in Abigail's favor, ordering Delia to pay her sister $50,000 for damage to her credit, lost income, and emotional distress from the identity theft.
She called me, and things were pretty positive at first. Like, I'm sorry I did that. I won't do that anymore. But you know what? Like, nothing's going to happen to me because it's a civil judgment. It's in another state.
She thought she was not going to have to pay the $50,000.
Definitely not have to.
So Abigail went to court again, this time in Maine. And nearly 4 years after Delia first got that Social Security number from Abigail, she agreed to pay her sister almost all the $50,000.
After this happened, I called my sister and she said to me on the phone, "You are not my sister anymore. You are dead to me."
2 sisters torn apart by a 9-digit number.
I can take you for all your faults, but don't know my Social Security number anymore. That's kind of how you feel when it's your family.
Identity theft of Social Security numbers, credit card information, personnel records is rampant these days, fueled by the internet, computers, and America's charge-it mentality.
$1,500 for a leather bustier?
Business is fighting back with TV ads.
Plus, it's not like I'm actually paying for it.
In dollar terms, banks and merchants are the biggest losers. The crime cost them $48 billion last year.
And the best part is, it's all free.
The government is fighting back, too. The president recently signed a new federal law on ID theft. Among other things, it specifies that merchants can only put the last 5 digits of your credit card number on receipts. But the depressing fact remains that 10 million people were hit by identity theft last year, and as many as 900,000 of them were victimized by their own flesh and blood.
Brother, brother, cousin, cousin, mother, daughter, whatever relative combination you can think of. We see it, we've heard it, we work with it.
Linda Foley and her husband Jay run the Identity Theft Resource Center, which counsels victims of the crime.
Identity Theft Resource Center, this is Linda. As far as family identity theft, I would say I'm getting 12 to 15 calls or emails every week.
Of just family identity theft?
All in the family, yes.
Without violating anyone's privacy, give us some cases.
A lot of them turn my stomach. We have one little boy who, of course, the police didn't know it was a little boy at the time. He owes about $80,000 in credit card debt.
Who did
Police
this to
go
him?
to do this. It was Daddy Dearest.
Daddy Dearest did this to his own son.
To his own son.
When it's a family member, especially a son or a daughter, I mean, it's like if you can't trust your kids, who are you going to trust? They're a part of you. I mean,
We'll call her Lynn. She asked we not use her real name. Her grown son stole her identity. Have you been able to tally up how much money he actually spent?
probably at least $100,000.
$100,000?
Probably, yeah.
Lynn's son went on a crime spree that included bad checks and credit accounts in her name all over town. Since her real name, like Lynn, could be either a man's or a woman's, he got away with it. His mother was becoming suspicious. Then she got a call from Sears.
He was writing a check for like $2,500 or something like that, and they called the house to verify it or something, and I told them to call the police.
It must be beyond the hardest thing for a mother to do, to say, arrest my son.
You go through all the emotional part later, like going to court.
She testified against him, and he did 9 months in jail.
Out of everything, this is the worst kind of pain. You just don't expect your child to do something like that. It's like he tore my heart, tore a part of it out, and it's never going to be the same.
When we first started reporting on identity theft 8 years ago, no one could have dreamed how widespread it would become or how many families would be caught up in it. Back then, we told the story of Mary Zupantz, a doctor who found that a gang of ID thieves had assumed her identity by forging her name to a simple post office change of address form. That diverted her letters to a storefront mail drop in Brooklyn, giving the crooks access to her financial accounts.
My life has been a nightmare as a result and continues to be.
She testified about it before Congress and spent many months straightening out her credit.
Oh, those are our tickets to L.A.
Ever since, Mary Zupantz and her husband David Jones have been careful to check their online banking and credit card accounts every day, looking for unauthorized transactions. Well, guess what happened just a year ago?
On this particular day, the first thing that came up was 3 withdrawals, ATM withdrawals, $800, $800, and $400. Well, that got my attention really quickly because I never get over $100 out of an ATM.
Oh, my heart just was in my stomach. I said, well, that's obviously not right.
It was a scam, it was an operation.
Identity thieves had figured out how to hotwire the ATM Mr. Jones used. Not only that, they had installed a tiny camera above the keypad so they could see the PIN number he punched in. The bad guys were caught, but for the second time, the Zupantz family had been hit by ID theft. And once again, they encountered a headache common to such victims, sorting it all out with the bank.
You're having to prove that you didn't do something, to prove that you didn't actually withdraw it. After all, they have your card number and the PIN number. It was all done quite properly. Must have been you, right, that took all that money out. Well, no, it wasn't.
Thank you for calling TransUnion Customer Protection. This is Mary Lou. How can I help you?
Matter of fact, getting your credit and good name cleared is often the most excruciating part of being a victim of identity theft. It takes years in some cases. Since the crime often starts with a stolen Social Security number, you might wonder why not just change that number?
Changing one's Social Security number is the equivalent of trying to cure a patient by amputating a leg for a common cold. You have to separate yourself with everything that your Social Security number is attached to. All of your professional records, your college transcripts, licensing, your credit history. If you change your Social Security number, you really have to change your driver's license and your name. You become a new person. In effect, you've created your own victim protection program.
So most ID theft victims tough it out, going through the blizzard of paperwork to get their lives back.
You lose your Pollyanna view of the world. You become cynical, skeptical, and you're distrustful of people. And I'm saddened by that.
And for All in the Family victims like Lynn and Abigail Kelly, the emotional price is even higher. Neither Abigail's sister nor Lynn's son wanted to be interviewed for our report. Their victims, meanwhile, struggle with issues of family and love and betrayal.
It's really difficult to put a feeling on it. It's like this person was my best friend too. This is somebody I talk to almost 3 or 4 times a week. So you're losing that best friend.
You said I lost my son, but it sounds to me like you still think he's your son.
That's really hard because I believe my son is dead. There's a part of me, I'd like to see him without seeing him.
You mean without him seeing you back?
So I can see he's okay, but when I see him, I know that person isn't my son, because I just can't believe my son would ever do something like that.